bring this down a bit. I'm Pat Savage Williams. I also live in Evanston. And I am connected with Evanston Township High School. I'm a member of Second Baptist Church. Roger and I have lived in this community for over 40 years. And I just have some brief comments. I support the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive and zoning plan code should be recommended by the City Council without any further delay. I understand, after hearing so many speakers this evening and thinking and reading about this so much, that this plan won't solve all of the issues. I understand that the issues are complicated and nuanced, which is not unusual given our community. But it will be a beginning towards steps to provide more affordable housing throughout all of Evanston. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tina Payton. For those who don't know me, I'm an affordable housing landlord in Evanston, my family, for over 100 years. I am a true Evanstonian. My grandmother bought our house that I still live in who her uncle built in the early 1900s. And we're the only house left on the block. This is fake news. This plan, fake news. You don't want to know why? A lot of people in this room go to these meetings when a developer comes and they say, rah, rah, we're going to give affordable housing. Evanston's inclusionary housing ordinance is 60% AMI, which means most of the buildings that the developers build today do not take HUD standards, which means they don't take Connection for the Homeless vouchers. They don't take Section 8 vouchers. They don't take Catholic Charities vouchers because they're HUD regulated. So you're talking about affordable housing? These buildings are not taking them. What happened and where were you when the Wesley people needed housing? They weren't at the Albion. They weren't at the Abador. They weren't at 1717 Ridge. They weren't at the Link. They weren't at E2. They weren't at the Main. They weren't at the Reserve. They weren't at Central Station. And they weren't at the Park and more. Because this is what Evanston has allowed and continue to allow. This plan does not help that at all. Where were you when my neighborhood was decimated? Why, I'm the only house on the block. This is Evanston, Illinois. The elephant in the room is called Northwestern University. Let them start paying what they owe. You make plans when you want to have your own agenda fulfilled. Northwestern wanted a research park at Emerson, Maple, East Railroad, and University. So they changed the zone to Research Park. And what Northwestern did was link the city Evanston money for eminent domain. Eminent domain. My black neighbors would not be able to come to what is now E2. So don't sit up here and pretend, a lot of people in this room, that this plan is going to make that better. Black residents is now 13% in Evanston, and nobody's doing anything. I'm a provider of affordable housing, and I take the vouchers. Why don't you help landlords like me go ahead and approve my building to help the people. I know that you're going to buzz me again, Chair, but I like to say this last thing. I feel some kind of way when there was only 3 Black people that spoke before me. And everybody says how they're helping Black and brown. Did you help them to this meeting tonight so they could tell you that they needed housing? So when you start talking about helping people or helping the plan, you need to talk to the people that it really affects, which is all of us, and make the people pay that need to pay, which is Northwestern.
Thank you, Ms. Payton.
My name is Mary Beth Schroeder. I live at 2734 Asbury in an R1 district where I've lived for 33 years. I don't live there alone, even though I'm a widow. I live with my grandchildren, 2 grandchildren, and their mother. It is delightful to live with teenagers again, as you can all imagine. No, most of the time it is. But the reason they live with me is because, surprise, Evanston has an affordable housing crisis. My not daughter-in-law, but the mother of my grandchildren, is a hard-working, wonderful preschool teacher. The preschool teacher you would want your children to have at Reba Early Learning Center. But with her salary, there is literally not a single place in Evanston that she and her children could afford. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to live here, but they can't live in the community that she works unless they live with me. I'm not going to be able to keep that house forever. It's a crisis that goes on. And they are just one family in a gazillion families in Evanston who need affordable housing. The comprehensive plan begins to address the need for affordable housing and some solutions. It is obviously not the entire solution. As others have said, we need improvements to the inclusionary housing ordinance. We need the zoning changes. We need a better use of the Affordable Housing Fund, but it is a start. In my professional life, before I retired, I worked for Evanston Community Foundation and ran Leadership Evanston. And since 1999, I have literally been in at least 200 meetings where people, or facilitated them, where people get to talk about what they think the biggest issue of Evanston is. And since 1999, guess what? Number 1 has perpetually been affordable housing. And in all that time, I've served on a million committees. We have done kind of nothing because we always get to this point where what is proposed and the solution that is proposed is just not perfect. We haven't spent enough time on talking about it or thinking about it. We will never find perfection. If there was perfection, we'd all live in a perfect world. We have to work with real possible solutions and begin to address the issue that has been brewing for at least 26 years and is now at crisis point. Thank you so much for your service to Evanston.
Thank you, Ms. Schroeder.
Good evening, Jeff Barini, 2nd Ward. A lot of discussion here, and I think in general I've heard 3 things that people generally agree upon, which is first, that we do need to redo our comprehensive plan and rezoning associated with that. 2, that we want more affordable housing here in Evanston. And 3rd, and most importantly, this work is really complex. Everybody seems to agree on that. One of the previous speakers lauded your collective wisdom. That's not an overstatement, because you are our experts here in Evanston. This is not San Francisco, this is not New Rochelle, this is not Minneapolis, it's here in Evanston, and you are charged with protecting that, and your job will be to evaluate the comprehensive plan and then the rezoning that are being handed to you. And so I wish you all the best in that, but it can't be rushed. You need the time to do your jobs thoroughly and to apply the expertise that you have and your knowledge of Evanston to do the best thing for the city. And so I urge you to take your time, because I think that will serve the city best in achieving all the goals that are inherent there in the comprehensive plan. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Commissioners, Ms. Jones. My name is Jane Grover. I live in the 7th Ward, been there for 30 years. I work for the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. I'm in the public engagement business for CMAP. I gotta say 3% participation is a pretty good number actually in our business, and I think the real measure is whether or not that participation has been representative of Evanston. So that's just my first thought here. The next 20 years will bring a lot of change to Evanston, spurred by technology, climate change, demographic shifts, and different generational preferences. You've seen the trends, they're in your packet. I think that Envision Evanston 2045 does a good job of addressing those trends. The comprehensive plan is really a plan to address the needs and expectations of younger generations. I'm a baby boomer, and Envision Evanston 2045 should not be about me. It's not about me, and it shouldn't be about me. It should be about the next generations. I want you to think about an ETHS 10th grader. I think you've heard from one tonight. He will be 36 in the year 2045, let's say. And that's whom we're planning for with this. These are our children and our grandchildren, and their expectations are going to be different than the expectations of the boomer generation or even the Gen X. And it's their experiences that should help guide development of this comprehensive plan. Ask yourselves, how will today's 10th grader at age 36 choose to get around in Evanston in 2045? Where will he or she be able to afford to live? Where will their jobs be located? What will Evanston of 2045 offer today's 10th graders? Will those 10th graders be able to come back to Evanston, as Mary Beth Schroeder's grandchildren have, and be able to find places to live in Evanston and make their way here? The Envision Evanston 2045 comprehensive plan really does look to that future, a more equitable and sustainable future. I submitted feedback to the committee, to staff through the survey. I just am worried that we are looking to make our short-term, immediate solutions the next generation's problems. Please recommend Envision Evanston 2045 to the City Council is just one step to address all those many challenges that our community faces. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm Eric Passett. I'm the owner of North Shore Apartments and Condos. I'm also a citizen of the 4th Ward. And so I've been in the property management business for about 35 years. So Envision 2045 sounds like a great idea to make affordable housing, but in effect, it's kind of a fallacy. Because part of what the city's pushing is, and I know this is probably going to ruffle some feathers, but I'm going to say it anyways, is to make Evanston electrified. So if we just step back and just think, if we just pass this the way we're going to, which I'm totally against, and then they put in, let's electrify Evanston, which is a fallacy because you can't do it, or at least not in today's world. You know, I mean, there's just not enough electricity around to do that. It's going to make Evanston so unaffordable that any landlord in their right mind would never build anything in Evanston. To make, like, if we had to convert all our buildings to become, you know, from gas forced or boiler systems to now electrified buildings, the cost would be astronomical. And now if you build new buildings that you have to have all electric instead of gas, again, it's not possible. Plus, it's astronomical. I mean, one of the buildings that's just getting built is doing geothermal. Well, I'm here to tell you that's very expensive. So my point of all this is I think we should, A, slow the process down and realize that this is all a fallacy. That we're going to start thinking we're going to build affordable housing, which it's only affordable to the 25 or the 10% of the people that get the lowered rent. The 90% of the people, rents get elevated because they have to subsidize the other 10%. Now, I'm not saying we're not for affordable housing, but it only creates affordable housing for a very small percentage. Because everybody else, the reason why rents are so high in those new high-rises is because they have to supplement 10% and sometimes 15% of everybody else. Now, I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but it's not, there's a lot of flaws to it. And so I think we should, A, slow this down and realize that also what City of Evanston's pushing is to become electric, which I don't know how that's ever going to happen in the time frame they're thinking of. You know, and I will agree with a lot of comments people made about the mayor, but enough said. I don't want to take any more time.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett.
Good evening. My name is Liz Nelson, and I'm speaking on behalf of Sue Lillebeck, Director of Advocacy at Connections for Homeless, who could not be here tonight. Over the last few months, you have been bombarded with data and speculation about the impacts of the zoning changes proposed in drafts of the Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Code. For every report or opinion in favor of zoning reform, you can find arguments for and against. One thing we're not hearing about, however, is the impact of maintaining the status quo of not reforming the zoning code. And we know a lot about that from past experience. Some people are doing very well in the current state. Many others are not. This is why we are advocating for change. If we don't make changes, luxury developers will continue to be the primary builders of new housing. If we don't reform our processes, affordable developers will continue to avoid Evanston or be forced to make their buildings smaller and less impactful. If we can't build more affordable housing, the displacement of our Black and low-income residents are imminent. And if we don't make it feasible to build, the missing middle housing will continue to be missing. Current zoning prohibits the kind of buildings we need. Reform will allow for this, but reform is only the beginning. We also need the following: a displacement prevention strategy, updates to rules around the Affordable Housing Fund, elimination of the 3 unrelated rule, requirements to increase the diversity among the land use commissioners, and affordable housing plan with specific strategies and goals. The comprehensive plan lays out the vision for ensuring that Evanston provides housing for people at all levels of income. We hope you will recommend its passage. We look forward to seeing the city's strategic housing plan and your ongoing discussion of the new zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you all for volunteering your time and your professional expertise to be on this commission. I know what an absolutely thankless task this can be, and I applaud your service. I've often said the brilliant Evanstonians I've worked with on various initiatives in town could run a small nation, and you are no exception, so thank you. I know that the recommendations of boards and commissions in town are often summarily disregarded and that your good counsel often goes unheeded. I understand how frustrating that can be. I've known entire committees to resign in protest over what they've witnessed, as was the case with the Ethics Committee a few years back. In fact, a close friend of mine and former colleague of yours stepped down from this very commission. But I'm here tonight despite my cardiologist's recommendation and my own promise to myself that I would never stand at this lectern again. After spending years of my life in Evanston fighting for the things that were important to me and to our community, things that I and others believed in passionately. For those of you who don't know, I ran against Daniel Biss in the last mayoral election, knowing full well that I wouldn't likely win against a career politician who had most recently run for governor, but wanting to enlighten Evanston about who Biss truly was and why he would be bad for our community. The rushed agenda surrounding the comprehensive plan and simultaneous zoning changes before you are a case in point. I have never seen Daniel Biss speak at this podium until I watched him address you at a recent meeting imploring you to accept this plan. In fact, it's an open secret that there's a breakneck pace to get this passed before the election. We should ask ourselves why. Much of what is being touted, and even an event here earlier tonight, are in the name of quote-unquote affordable housing, yet the plan itself includes no such language, none. As Perry L. Davis, candidate for the 7th Ward Council seat, said in a recent essay in the Roundtable, if there is one thing Evanston leaders are good at, it's clothing a mercenary agenda in progressive disguise. The debate over Envision Evanston 2045, the city's overhaul of its comprehensive plan and zoning code, stands as a prime example. Touted as a measure that will create more affordable housing, it will actually make it easier for developers to do what they want, regardless of community impact. We were told by Biss and others that those changes will be made in the future and that it would be immoral to delay the process of passing this plan. Immoral. Well, to me that seems very much pot kettle from a guy who literally convinced others against voting for a teacher's pension, saying, and I quote, as a matter of politics, I can get away with offending state employees, saying also, I don't mean to sound crass, and later admitting his remarks regarding pension benefits were kind of a slimy thing to say. These are political calculations that were not only controversial, but ultimately deemed unconstitutional. Political calculations. This is who Biss is, and this is why he is rushing this process and forcing you to advance a proposal that you probably know as professionals isn't right. This is what political expediency looks like.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up, please.
A recent roundtable article states, significantly, the proposed zoning changes do not require developers to build any housing that is affordable to low and moderate income households, and the proposed zoning provides no incentives to do so. It's counting on trickle-down economics. It's counting on building bigger properties that wealthier people can move into in the hope that they will take the smaller properties and divide them for affordable housing. Well, that isn't what happens. What happens is a developer takes a $500,000 house on Harrison, tears it down, and builds two $1.6 million homes that he sells at a great profit. So I ask you.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up, please.
Yeah, I will. And I ask you to please don't rush this process. Take the time and get the information that you need to make a well-informed decision. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you to everyone who came out this evening and to our previous meetings. Thank you to the 180, I think we're at 181 pages of additional comments that we've received online just in the past 2 days, specifically relating to the comp plan. So thank you to everyone for that. Thank you for being engaged. The process as we're kind of moving forward is we will be closing the public testimony portion of the comprehensive plan this evening. At our next meeting, we will be hearing from chairs and representatives of select commissions who have a role in the comprehensive plan or have chapters in that plan, so they are provided an opportunity to give an executive summary of anything from their committees or commissions that they feel we should be provided with. Do you have a question?
Just to note, we're going to keep open the opportunity for members
I'll
of
get to that in a minute,
okay.
yeah. Although we are closing the public testimony this evening, submitting comments online will still be received. Those will all be made part of a record that does go to City Council. So just don't feel that just because you heard something tonight and have not had a chance to respond to it, that your voice will not be heard through council. We will not be taking that testimony any longer, but it will move forward onto council, and we will have eyes on it as well when we make our vote and hold our meeting next week. Also, I'd just like to say Evanston is a very complex city. I think everybody who lives here is willing to acknowledge that. I am pleased that we have made it through this process mostly by not calling names, by not attacking each other. Just because we have differing opinions does not make somebody right and someone wrong. We all have different experiences that we bring to this, and that happens for not just for the commissioners who sit up here, but also for all the members of the public who are engaged as well. So I do thank you for being civil in a nation that is quickly becoming very uncivil. So I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. With that, I am going to close the public testimony portion of this hearing. The hearing will continue. As I mentioned before, please feel free to submit comments online. We will be hearing from chairs and representatives of other committees, as well as making our recommendations to City Council. I also want to encourage people, there is a question on City Council's agenda for Monday to have a discussion on the process and timeline for this. So that is something that you will probably hear or see, and that may affect our moving forward on the 15th, because we do take our direction from City Council.
Documents, the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. The conversation tonight was centered on the comprehensive plan. This was a community input driven process where we went out of the community, we had community meetings, did pop-up events, invited people to office hours, surveys, different ways to actually get the thoughts, opinions, ideas of the Evanston community.
Can we ask questions while you do this? Because I think there are a lot of people that are questioning this part of the process, this early part, because, you know, we got these slides that kind of summarized it in generalities, but were any of the, I also know that, because I was at some of these, where the questions were very like, what do you like about Evanston? Do you like parks? Yes. Do I like green space? Yeah. You know, I mean, very general, pie in the sky kind of stuff. Was there anything that gave these people, I'm talking about the 8 months of questions, any indication of eliminating R1 zoning or eliminating parking requirements or any of the more controversial issues, or did that just land in November?
So early engagement did focus on lived experiences in Evanston. You know, what do you like about Evanston? What are the current challenges that you're facing? All of that. Megan's going to go through a little bit more in her presentation how we progressed and iteratively identified certain elements that show up in the draft plan. What you're discussing in terms of observations and this kind of suggestion to move towards allowing more housing options within all neighborhoods of Evanston actually resulted in the consultant's feedback, which was presented to council based on their observations in July. And so that is where their observations, and they recommended based on those observations that the city consider policies around allowing single, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in all neighborhoods.
See, what's suspicious about that is that there was a study that Connections for the Homeless sponsored that where this stuff first started to come out, and then that all of a sudden that became almost verbatim what is in the comprehensive plan. So a lot of people are looking at that and saying, wait a second, it didn't come from these interviews and neighborhood comments. It came from the consultants.
Correct. It came from the consultants.
Right, and not from the residents.
In addition to the community input, the consultants also made their observation knowns and recommendations, which staff presented to council.
I think that point, though, is a critical point. That because everybody's asking, like, where did this stuff come from? Well, what you're saying is it didn't come from the residents; it came from the consultants.
Based on the feedback that residents provided to the consultants,
I will challenge you to give us any resident that asked for this. Any.
I think you heard from residents this evening.
No, they're reacting, and I get the reaction and say because they've been told this is going to give them affordable housing, which is not.
So can I make the suggestion that we move through the process?
Okay. Sorry.
After each person presents, then.
But excuse me, I sort of got the sense of that what we have right now is very incomplete. It's not even a revised comp plan. It's a list of to-dos.
Correct.
But you just said that we're not going to see the answers to this. We're not going to see any more. We're not going to see a plan before it goes to council. Is that the idea?
At this point, we're asking for recommendations from the Land Use Commission in terms of changes they would like to see incorporated based on, and then it would move forward to City Council and those revisions would be incorporated. Keep in mind, we
don't know the answers to some of these things. I could find them, but where you say, well, we'll study this. Okay, well, what's the result of that study? I just feel like if we're supposed to pass judgment on the plan, we need to see the plan. Simple.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. I think the way that it's been structured and the conversations we've had with the chair is he's asked us to prepare for you all for your consideration change options. It's really difficult for staff to redraft a new plan for your consideration without understanding what changes you want to see happen. And
No, I
so
understand.
that's why we're here to have these conversations.
I totally understand.
Yep.
I think that the steps are, you've done this, and then we have comments on this, and then you do the things that are in the to-do list, and then we see the results of that, and then we make a recommendation, and then it goes to council. That seems like the plan. That will take a while to do that. So that's what I'm getting at. Like, are we shortcutting the LUC review process?
I will let you guys determine that and give direction to staff on how you would like us to proceed.
Okay, but that, I got it right though, that the intent was to give us this list of to-dos, and then we make comments or whatever, and then it goes, sometime later it goes to council without us seeing it. That was the intent.
Correct. You're providing direction and input into the plan, the draft plan. That is my understanding, of discussions. I don't know, Chair, if you want to share anything from your perspective.
I mean, this is the discussions that we've had based on the timing that is being directed
That's
to us.
exactly the point.
It is exactly the point, and I'm hoping that when we have, City Council has their discussion on Monday night, we will be able to get some clarification on some of this stuff. As of right now, this is the plan, the timing that we have been given in order to get something to City Council on their timeline.
The other part of this, and I just talked about us, but it's all these concerned citizens out there. When do they get a chance to review, the plan?
So that would be as part of the city council process.
And the city council will hold hearings like we do?
I have not gotten direction from the city council on how they'd like to process this plan.
Yeah, they typically don't.
All right, let's just move through where we are right now.